There's a PS2 game that not many people played, but collectors are paying hundreds for it today. A game where you're hunted, powerless, objectified. It was too much for some players and too weird for Capcom, and too rare for most people to even find a copy. So why is Haunting Ground suddenly one of the most talked about horror games of its generation? What was this game? Haunting Ground, or Demento, in Japan, is a survival horror game released on the PS2 back in 2005. It was developed and published by Capcom. It landed in Japan first, then Europe, and finally North America. A decade later, though, it got a digital re-release on the Japanese PlayStation Store for the PS3. While it's not officially part of the Clock Tower series, it might as well be. Haunting Ground shares the same core mechanics: stalkers that hunt you down, a panic system, and places to hide. And it was made by many of the same developers who worked on Clock Tower 3. Some even think it was originally being developed as Clock Tower 4, and that it reused early Resident Evil 4 assets that never made it into the final game. The story follows Fiona Belli, a woman who wakes up trapped in this giant castle after a car crash. She's not alone, and that's not a good thing. The people in this place are obsessed with her, whether they want to control her, use her, or worse. Her only real ally is Huey, a white shepherd that becomes essential to surviving the nightmare. What starts out as a run-for-your-life horror setup quickly changes into something a lot deeper, with themes of alchemy, manipulation, trauma, and twisted science all playing a part.
Beautiful, isn't it? That, my dear, is what you will become in the future.
So here's the thing, Haunting Ground is rare, and not just because of price. This came out late in the PS2's life cycle. By then, games like GTA San Andreas and God of War were dominating. Capcom didn't push this one hard, and with no real brand recognition or hype behind it, they just didn't print many copies. It also didn't sell very well. Reviews were mixed at the time, and a lot of people just weren't into slow-paced survival horror anymore, especially not something this weird. And let's be honest, the subject matter didn't help. A lot of players bounced off it immediately because of how uncomfortable it could get, so it flopped, at least in terms of sales. But over time, it started building this cult reputation between the atmosphere, the dog mechanics, and just how uncomfortable and bizarre it is. It stuck with people. It's one of those games where once you played it, you don't really forget it. Collectors started looking for it years later, and by then, it was already gone from shelves. People online will call it one of the holy grail items for the PS2. It's lumped in with titles like Rule of Rose and Kuon, games that maybe weren't appreciated at launch but became legendary just from word of mouth and scarcity. And then there's the preservation angle. This was never re-released outside of Japan, not even digitally. So unless you still got your original disc or a PS2 laying around, you're out of luck. The inaccessibility only added to its mystique. Basically, it's rare because no one bought it when they had the chance, and now everybody wants it because they can't. I actually used to own this game, and back then I think I paid somewhere around $150 for it, maybe $200. Pricey, sure, but it's not unthinkable. Now that price would be considered a deal. These days, Haunting Ground is one of the most expensive survival horror titles on the PS2. Loose copies are pushing $250, $300, and if you want it complete in box, you're looking more around $400, $500, and sealed copies are over $1,000. It's crazy. And this isn't just eBay scalper prices. Sites like Price Charting back this up. Reddit threads are filled with collectors kicking themselves for not grabbing it when it was $35. Even some of the collector forums talk about seeing tattered copies going over $300, which is just ridiculous. So what's driving this? Well, part of it's the usual story. Low print run, high demand. Capcom didn't ship a ton of these, especially towards the end of the PS2 lifecycle. Combine that with the fact that it never got a proper re-release in the West, no digital version, no remaster, nothing. And you've got a game that became a unicorn practically overnight. But rarity alone doesn't explain it. Haunting Ground has this cult status. It's not just expensive, it's desirable. It taps into a very specific niche, people who love that clock tower style horror, weird psychological themes, and frankly, just controversy. And all of that together makes it one of those must-own titles if you're serious about collecting. So yeah, this isn't just a game, it's a statement piece in any PS2 collection, a trophy. And if you don't already have it, good luck hunting it down without burning a hole in your wallet. And it's not just that Haunting Ground is rare, it was already rare. What really inflated the price was the market hitting a fever pitch around 2020, during the pandemic. Retro game prices went ballistic. Price charting tracked an average increase of over 33% for retro titles from March 2020 to March 2021, and PS2 games soared about 35% in that same window. A lot of collectors had time, cash, and nowhere to go. Retro gaming got hot, and there's only so much supply. That old PS2 copy you stashed away, suddenly it wasn't just nostalgia, it was a goldmine. Then came full-on grading services like Wata, launched around 2018, and major players like CGC got into the game, encasing copies in hard cases with numeric grades like the ones comics get. Sealed copies of Mario games were hitting $100,000 auctions. This created a speculative frenzy. Critics accused grading companies of artificially inflating value. Some Reddit collectors even stated calling it a scam, saying graders were stockpiling, grading, and flipping games to rub salt in the inflation wounds. So for Haunting Ground, a game that was already rare and remembered only by cult fans, enter COVID plus grading mania, and now you're looking at copy prices that reflect not just rarity, but hype, collector zeal, and a market built on nostalgia turned speculative. Now this is where Haunting Ground starts to get divisive. There's no sugarcoating it. This game leans hard into themes of control, powerlessness, and sexuality. And yeah, that includes heavy implications of forced pregnancy and assault. You play as Fiona, trapped, pursued, and objectified. Every enemy you encounter is obsessed with her in one way or another, not just in a kill the protagonist horror game kind of way, but in a you are an object to be possessed kind of way. The game doesn't just toe the line, it dances all over it, and for some, that's exactly the point. This wasn't just about jump scares and creepy castles. Haunting Ground weaponizes the female body as a core horror mechanic. Fiona's appearance, her vulnerability, the camera angles, it's all intentional. Some people see that and call it exploitive. Others see a critique of those exact things. A sort of twisted reflection of how women are treated in media and society. And it's not just in the visuals or the story. Every mechanic reinforces that theme. Fiona isn't strong. She doesn't fight back conventionally. She panics, she trips, she reacts. Her only real power is to run, and to rely on Huey, her dog. And even that, relying on something else for safety, feeds into the overarching feeling of dependence. It's a horror game where your biggest threat isn't monsters or jump scares, it's the constant invasive sense that your body isn't yours, that you're being acted upon, not acting. But that's where the divide comes in. Some players and critics argue that it's all just gross fan service disguised as depth. You've got suggestive animations, revealing outfits, and a level of voyeurism that's impossible to ignore. But on the other hand, there's a strong case that Haunting Ground is a horror game that uses those uncomfortable elements on purpose. Like Capcom saying, yeah, this is how women are portrayed, uncomfortably, unnecessarily, and here's what it feels like to be on the receiving end. It's heavy and messy, but it's also why the game has stayed in conversations nearly 2 decades later. Whether you love it, hate it, or fall somewhere in between, Haunting Ground wasn't trying to be safe. If you're still here with me, thank you. These kinds of stories aren't always easy to talk about, but they matter. If this kind of deeper look at horror resonates with you, consider subbing. There's a lot more coming. And the way all of that plays out, from the themes to the fear, it's baked into how you actually play the game. You're guiding Fiona through this massive, oppressive castle, Belli Castle. And it's not just about finding keys and opening doors. You're trying to escape. You're navigating courtyards, towers, booby traps. And you're not alone. You got Huey, your dog. And he's more than just a companion. He's crucial. You two have to work together to solve puzzles, avoid instant death traps, and survive the stalkers hunting you down. Sometimes that means hiding, sometimes it means standing your ground, but it never feels safe. There's no HUD cluttering your screen either, and nothing to remind you it's just a game. Everything's done through Fiona's inventory. That's where you manage your items, equipment, notes, and maps. And there's also stamina. Fiona doesn't have infinite energy like most horror protagonists. She tires out, fast. You'll see it in how she moves, how her posture changes, her arm drops to her side, her breath gets heavier, her run slows. It's not just a cool detail, it's dangerous. If you push her too hard during a chase, you're basically handing her over to whoever's stalking her. You have to let her rest, crouch, heal, or risk getting caught. Even Huey can wear out, the stalkers too. It turns every encounter into this tense balance act between pushing forward and staying alive. You're not mowing enemies down, you're just surviving by inches. And then there's the stalker system. This is where the tension never lets up. The castle isn't just a backdrop, it's alive. The inhabitants roam the halls off screen, waiting. You don't always see them, but they're there. And the more noise you make, footsteps, doors slamming, constantly barking orders at Huey, the higher the chance that one of them hears you and starts closing in. Sometimes it's scripted, but there's also a hidden timer quietly ticking behind the scenes. About every 30 minutes the game will send someone after you, no matter where you are. That means you're always on the clock. You've got this limited window to make real progress, solve puzzles, find shortcuts, before the hunt begins again, and the game gives you signs. The main music drops out. You might hear footsteps, or worse, their voice. Huey gets tense, growling or staring into empty space. That's your 10-second warning. You either gotta find a hiding spot fast, or prepare to run for your life. And if they see you, it's on. They chase, they attack, and it's relentless. You can kick, shove, and even use alchemy items or command Huey to bite them. But none of it truly stops them. It just buys you time to escape. The best case scenario is outlast them. If the music fades back in, you've made it. You've earned yourself a brief break until the next time. Now if you're brave or reckless, you can fight them. If you do enough damage, you can knock them out temporarily and grab one free item off their body. But trying to loot them more than that, they wake up instantly. So it's a high risk for a quick reward type of system, and not something I'd recommend unless you've got anti-panic medicine and know what you're doing. And just to keep things extra stressful, there are other enemies too. Not super dangerous ones, but the kind that sabotage you. There are these little glowing orbs called luminescents. They follow you and let out a loud sound if they touch you. Then there's the homunculi, freakish fetus-like things that just scream when they see you. And guess who hears those screams? The stalkers. Everything about this system is designed to keep you paranoid. Every room you enter could be a trap. Every sound could be the start of a chase. And the worst part, that sense that you're being hunted. Not by monsters, but by people.
Huey! Huey!
And then there's the hiding mechanic. Fiona's not a fighter. Most of the time your best option is to just vanish. And the game gives you a lot of ways to do that. You can tuck into wardrobes, slide under beds or tables, even disappear into bushes outside. But it goes deeper than that, a lot deeper. Some hiding spots aren't marked. There's no prompt. You just have to figure it out. Behind a door, a piece of broken furniture, in a shadowed corner. Anything that keeps you out of the stalker's line of sight. That's fair game. And when it works, it feels like you've earned it. But here's the kicker. The stalkers learn. Hide behind a door one too many times, and they'll start checking behind doors. Caught under a bed more than once. Guess where they're checking first? The game watches how you play and adapts. So sometimes the smartest thing to do isn't to hide, it's to slowly slip out while they're searching the other side of the room. No footsteps or panic, just calm, careful movement towards the exit. It's a gamble, but it can work better than going back to the hiding spot they already checked before. And now we have Huey. You meet him pretty early in the game, and from that point on, he's not just some background companion, he's everything. A guard dog, a puzzle solver, your one lifeline in a place that wants Fiona dead or worse. You can command him to stay, follow, fetch, bark, growl, attack. You can even pet him and praise him. He's smart, but he's not automatic. You have to earn that loyalty. The bond between Fiona and Huey is one of the most important systems in the game. You need to praise him when he listens, scold him when he doesn't, heal him when he gets hurt. All of it builds trust. If you ignore him too much or treat him like trash, and he'll start ignoring your commands. You push him far enough, he might leave you, or worse, he'll turn on you. And if that happens, it opens the door to one of the game's darkest endings, where Fiona's fate takes a seriously disturbing turn. So it's on you to raise Huey right, respect him, rely on him, and he'll fight for you. But abuse that trust, and the game punishes you for it hard. Huey can get knocked out if he takes too many hits. Normally you can revive him, but in hard mode, if he goes down he's gone, and without him, it's game over. And if all that wasn't stressful enough, Haunting Ground hits you with a panic system that kicks in when things really go sideways. This isn't some blinking meter on the screen. When Fiona starts to panic, you know, the whole game warps, motion blur, the world goes gray. Everything feels like it's freezing in place for a second. Your controller starts pulsing to a heartbeat. It's intense. Panic triggers in all kinds of ways. Disturbing sights, sudden noises, getting chased too long, getting hurt. Fiona starts to lose it. She'll trip, stumble, crawl, completely fall apart. And when she hits a full panic mode, that's when it gets dangerous. She screams and bolts. You can't control her properly anymore. She's just running. You can try to steer her away from walls and furniture, but it's messy. She can still open doors, but she won't stop to close them or unlock anything. If she slams into something or falls down during this state, it's basically a coin flip. She's probably dead if she gets caught. That's when you hope you've been good to Huey, because if your bond is strong enough, you can call him, and he'll try to distract the stalker just long enough for Fiona to come back to her senses. There are ways to manage panic, items like lavender, mundus, or sedatio. It helps lower it. Equipment like chokers and earrings can also reduce how fast it builds, but once Fiona hits full-blown panic, she can't use anything. You're just along for the ride, hoping she makes it through. It's a brutal mechanic, but it works. It doesn't just simulate fear, it makes you feel it. You're not worried about a health bar, you're worried about losing control, and that's exactly what Haunting Ground wants. There's this one room you'll be stumbling across in Haunting Ground, and if you're paying attention, it might just save your life. The refining room. Tucked away behind small holes in the wall, Fiona reluctantly can crawl inside. Huey, however, can't follow. He'll wait outside, which adds a layer of risk. Sometimes he stays put, other times he wanders off. And if that happens, you'll have to find him again. But inside these hidden spaces, Fiona's safe. Stalkers can't reach her here. It's a brief moment of calm, and a chance to craft what you'll need to survive. In the corner of each refining room sits a strange machine called the Veratio Machina, a piece of alchemic equipment that lets you take medallions you found throughout the game and refine them into useful items. You feed the machine a medallion, spin the mechanism, and see what comes out the other end. Sometimes you'll get helpful recovery tools, items that calm Fiona's panic or restore her stamina. Other times you'll get offensive gear like magnesia, a mine-like trap you drop on the ground that explodes when stalkers step on it, or antimony powder, a small projectile that detonates on impact. It's not strong, but it's enough to stagger an enemy and buy time to run. The refining room is one of those mechanics that flies under the radar in a first playthrough, but once you realize what it does, it becomes a crucial part of your toolkit. It's quiet, tucked away, and optional, but it gives you just enough of an edge to push back. Now that you've seen how Haunting Ground plays, let's take a step back, because none of this was just about game design for its own sake. Every mechanic, every system, is in the service of the same thing, putting you directly in Fiona's shoes, and showing you exactly what it feels like to be objectified. You're not just playing as a character who's vulnerable, you're being forced to live out that vulnerability through the systems themselves. Fiona doesn't fight back like a typical protagonist. There's no shotgun, no combat build. You run, you hide, you avoid. You rely on Huey. And even that dependence, having to command, beg, scold, and praise, is just another layer of control. You're never fully in charge. The game makes sure you feel that. The Stalker system especially, that's the core of it. These characters don't just want to kill you, they want to possess you. They lurk, they leer, they interrupt your progress. They are a constant threat, and they behave like predators. If you're too loud, too visible, too obvious, they come, and they don't stop. Your space isn't yours, your time isn't yours. You're constantly being acted upon. That's the horror. Then there's the panic system. Fiona literally loses control of herself when things get too intense. She runs without your input, she screams, she stumbles, you can't steady her. The game doesn't let you. It's like being trapped in someone else's fear, and you can't make it stop. It's not cinematic, it's experiential. You don't just watch Fiona unravel, you feel it with her. Even something as mechanical as stamina becomes thematic. If you run too much, she slows, she tires, she physically gives out. You're punished for trying to push forward. It's subtle, but it reinforces the idea that you are never powerful in this world. You're surviving it minute by minute. And when it comes to defending yourself, you can throw powders, set traps, drop bombs, but none of it kills. Everything is just a delay, a momentary reprieve. Even violence isn't empowering here. It's just another way to maybe buy time. The hiding mechanic drives it home. You're taught to be small, to disappear. And the game is smart enough to evolve that mechanic over time. Abuse a hiding spot and your pursuers learn. They start checking behind the same door or under the same beds. It's not just fear anymore, it's paranoia. You start thinking like a victim, always guessing what they'll do next. In the alchemy system, even that's quiet commentary. You're alone, making use of whatever scraps you find, refining them into tools that help you stay sane, to reduce panic, to survive. You're not crafting weapons, you're crafting emotional stability. That's a rare lens in any game, let alone one from this era. So no, Haunting Ground isn't just playing with fan service or shock value. It's showing you, through its mechanics, what it feels like to be treated like an object. It's giving you the constant sense that you're being watched, hunted, and reduced. That you're not the actor in this world, you're the acted upon. That's why people still talk about it, because even nearly 20 years later, there's barely another game that forces you to live inside objectification like this one does.
Wait a minute. I remember being in the car with...
So now that we've talked about how Haunting Ground plays and what it means, let's get into the story itself. And fair warning, there are going to be some spoilers here. This isn't going to be a full scene-by-scene breakdown or deep lore dive, but I'm going to talk about the key moments, characters, and themes that unfold throughout the game. So if you've never played it and want to go in completely blind, now's your chance to skip ahead. Otherwise, let's keep going. Because the story, it's where all these mechanics and themes really come together. Haunting Ground isn't just about vulnerability and control. It shows it to you, piece by piece, through every character you meet and every area you explore. And it all starts with Fiona waking up alone, trapped, and completely unaware of the nightmare she's about to be thrown into. She wakes up in a cellar after a car crash. She's disoriented, doesn't remember much, and finds herself inside a cage, but the door isn't locked. She steps out and almost immediately gets startled by a white dog that growls and takes off. She leaves the cellar and realizes she's in some kind of old castle. That's when she runs into a woman named Denalia, a maid who hands Fiona some basic clothes but says nothing. No explanations, no answers, just silence before she walks away. Not long after, Fiona runs into someone else. Debilitas. He's massive, hunched, and clearly unstable. He's a homunculus, basically an artificial human, and he sees Fiona as a toy, something to keep. He chases her around the castle until Ricardo Belli, the castle's supposed caretaker, steps in and stops him. Ricardo doesn't tell Fiona that her parents, Ugo and Alia, died in the car crash, and now she's their heir to the castle. It's a lot, and Fiona passes out. She wakes up again in the guest room. Outside, she hears the dog from earlier. He's tied to a tree with wire. She frees him, tells him to leave. But Debilitas attacks again. The dog protects her. After that, they stick together, becoming her only real support. Fiona starts trying to figure out where she is and how to escape. The main gate's locked and the whole place is sealed off, so she starts exploring, looking for anything that can help her get out.
Fiona.
Who is this?
You must pay attention now, Fiona.
As things get darker, Fiona learns the real reason she's trapped here. She's the carrier of something called the Azoth. It's a kind of alchemical life force, and every person in this castle wants it. Not for good reasons either. There's a point where Fiona realizes that nearly everyone around her either wants to kill her, violate her, or use her body in some horrific way. Throughout the castle, she finds scattered notes and letters from someone named Lorenzo. He claims he wants to help her escape, and while she's still figuring out whether that's true, she and Huey are chased by Debilitas into a chapel. This is where you deal with him for good, and the way you do it actually affects how the game ends. You can kill him outright, or show mercy and drop a chandelier on him to knock him out. But just as Debilitas is out of the picture, Daniela shows up again. this time to serve Fiona dinner. And this is where things start unraveling even more. Daniela becomes obsessed with what Fiona can do: smell, taste, feel pain, and pleasure. She wants Fiona's Azoth to make herself complete. It's hinted that Daniela can't have sex or children, and that's a huge source of her age. Not long after, while Fiona's resting, Daniela slams her head into a mirror until it shatters, and then grabs a chunk of glass and goes after her. In one moment, Fiona trips on the stairs, and Daniela catches her own reflection in a mirror and just loses it, screaming at what she sees. Eventually, after exploring an older part of the mansion, Fiona and Huey end up in a stargazing room, where the fight with Daniela finally happens. Daniela says Fiona's body is filthy, licks the shard of glass or the iron poker she's holding, and starts crying blood. But in the end, Fiona ends it by indirectly impaling Daniela with a large glass shard from the ceiling. Daniela smiles as she dies, because she finally felt pain. For her, that was the missing piece. Pain made her feel alive. It let her feel something, and dying like that was the only thing that made her existence feel real. But the nightmare doesn't stop there. Ricardo eventually starts chasing Fiona with a flintlock pistol. He's got his face covered most of the time, but when he finally corners her in the forest, he reveals the truth. He has the same face as her father, Ugo. Because they're clones, Ricardo is actually the original, and Ugo was created from him. Ricardo killed Ugo, first by trying to stage the car crash, then finishing the job later, because he was angry that Ugo left the castle and married Alia, Fiona's mother. Now Ricardo wants to use Fiona to make himself immortal. He plans to use her womb and her Azoth to be reborn, literally. But once again, Huey saves her. He helps Fiona escape from the tower Ricardo locks her in, and during a fight on the top of the tower, Ricardo falls to his death. Just when things seem to wrap up, Fiona enters what's called the House of Truth, and there she meets Lorenzo, her alchemist grandfather. And he's just as twisted as everyone else. At first, he appears as this old, frail man in a wheelchair. He tells Fiona that Ricardo was always the problem, and explains that he is the one who created both Ricardo and Ugo, in his quest to find a body with Azoth he could use for himself. Ugo had it, but ran off, started a family, and ruined Lorenzo's plans. Now that Fiona's here, he's ready to take what's his. Lorenzo ditches the wheelchair, crawls toward Fiona, and she ends up crushing him in a machine. But of course, he doesn't stay dead. He comes back, young, fast, and dangerous. Turns out he stole the Azoth from Ricardo's corpse using mouth-to-mouth. And now he's able to control his aging and teleport at will. Fiona and Huey manage to knock him into a pit of lava, but even that isn't enough. The castle starts collapsing, everything burning, and Lorenzo comes back one last time, on fire, a skeleton, still chasing them down. But finally, he's destroyed for good. Fiona and Huey escape the castle, leaving the nightmare behind. If you manage things just right, this is the best outcome Fiona can get. After everything, after the escapes, the fights, the constant fear, Fiona finally makes it to the main gate. She's got the key, but she's shaking. The trauma, the pressure, the weight of everything she survived is catching up to her. Her hands won't stop trembling as she fumbles with the lock. That's when Huey steps in, literally. He nudges her, grounds her. It's a small moment, but it's enough. Fiona takes a breath, steadies herself, and finally gets the key into the lock. But just as they're about to leave, the double doors behind them creak open. Debilitas steps out, holding a massive pair of hedge clippers. There's this tense, uncomfortable silence. Fiona freezes. He stares at her. It could go either way. But then Debilitas bows. That's it, just a bow. No chase, no violence, just a moment of understanding. Maybe even gratitude. If you spared his life earlier, using the chandelier instead of killing him, he remembers that. He respects it. Fiona and Huey walk out of the castle, finally free. As the camera lingers, Debilitas turns to the overgrown hedges in the garden. He starts clipping away, quietly humming to himself. It's strange, it's a little sad, but it's peaceful for once. When you step back and look at the full arc of Haunting Ground, it's not just a survival horror story. It's a narrative that intentionally makes you feel the constant creeping dread of being seen as an object rather than a person. Fiona isn't a trained fighter, she's not a chosen one. She's not even fully aware of what's going on at first. She's just a girl who woke up in a cage. And that's important, because from the very beginning, the game is telling you this isn't about empowerment through combat. It's about fear, vulnerability, and survival in a world that sees Fiona as a means to an end, a body, a vessel, a prize. Every stalker in the castle represents some facet of that objectification. Debilitas sees Fiona as a doll, something to dress up and play with, not a person of autonomy. Daniela envies Fiona's ability to feel, to be desired, to be complete. She lashes out not just with violence, but with the kind of jealousy that comes from being denied humanity herself. Ricardo isn't just trying to dominate Fiona, he literally wants to use her body to rebirth himself. Her existence is reduced to her womb, and genetics can offer him. And Lorenzo, at the top of it all, treats Fiona like an alchemical formula. She's not his granddaughter to him. She's the final ingredient in a plan that spans generations. But what's wild is how the game puts you in Fiona's shoes. It's not just the visuals or the cutscenes, it's the mechanics. You have to tiptoe through spaces you don't feel safe in. You have to listen for cues, watch body language, and pray that the person chasing you doesn't hear a creaky door or catch your breath. You hide, you crawl, you panic. The game removes your power and gives you fear instead. And in doing that, it makes you feel a piece of what Fiona's going through, the constant unease, the way her body is constantly under scrutiny, the way her choices are limited not by what she wants to do, but what she has to do to stay alive. So when people write off Haunting Ground as just another fan service heavy horror game with a pretty protagonist, they're missing the point. Yes, Fiona's design is provocative, but that's intentional. It's part of the commentary. The game wants you to feel how that gaze dehumanizes her. It wants you to feel uncomfortable, because she is uncomfortable. It wants you to be frustrated because she's cornered, and it wants you to reflect on how easily somebody's body can become a battleground in someone else's story. In the end, Haunting Ground isn't just about escaping a castle. It's about reclaiming autonomy in a world that's trying to take it from you. The game didn't sell well when it dropped, which isn't surprising considering Resident Evil 4 released around the same time and absolutely dominated the genre space. On top of that, Capcom barely marketed this game. It kind of just existed. It slipped through the cracks, but even with its commercial failure, it's found a real cult following over time. That fanbase didn't just grow because it's rare or expensive, although yeah, physical copies are extremely pricey now. It grew because Haunting Ground actually had something unique to say. Critics were split, sitting it at 67 on Metacritic, but users rated it much higher. 8.8 at the time of writing this, and that tracks. People who've taken the time to dig into it have found a game with smart, unsettling design. The puzzles are clever, the music and voice acting still hold up. Huey's AI is genuinely impressive. The panic system was different and impactful, and the lack of load times, the ability to move fluidly through rooms without breaks. It was pretty ahead of its time in most cases. You're never pulled out of Fiona's reality, and that makes the horror hit harder. Ultimately, Haunting Ground may not have landed with everyone at release, but it's aged into something more than a curiosity. It's a game that dared to make the player feel uncomfortable for a reason, not just to scare, but to provoke thought. And that's something survival horror doesn't always aim for, let alone stick the landing on. Looking at everything we've gone over, the mechanics, the story, the way it all weaves together, it's clear that Haunting Ground was aiming for more than just scares. It's a survival horror game that sticks to its themes, even if those themes are uncomfortable. The systems aren't just there for gameplay, they're deliberately built to make the player uneasy. And that unease ties directly into the narrative. It's not always subtle, and it's definitely not perfect, but the way it explores powerlessness, control, and how people view and use Fiona, it all gives the game a specific kind of edge, one that makes it linger. It's messy, it's flawed, but it has something to say, and for a game that was mostly overlooked at launch, that's part of why it still stands out. If you've made it to the end, thank you for sticking with me. Haunting Ground is one of those games that slips under the radar. But the more you look at it, the more there is to talk about, whether it's the way it plays, the uncomfortable themes it leans into, or the way it puts the player directly in Fiona's shoes, for better or worse. If you've played Haunting Ground, or if this video got you interested in checking it out, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment. Tell me what you think about the mechanics, the themes, or just how wild some of the moments are. And if you enjoyed this video, consider subbing. It helps me out more than you think, and it really pushes me to keep doing more of these. I've got a lot more content on the way, covering obscure, underrated, and weird horror games that deserve more love, or at least more discussion. Also, if y'all ever want to chat, I do have a Discord server where I hang out when I can. It's just a chill spot to talk. There's a link in the description for it. But as always, we'll see you all later.